A warm welcome to you. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to this week's session of Check-in Wednesdays with Transformation Team. We're happy you could join us. We as Transformation Team are an organization that's passionate about enabling people to find meaning and well-being in their lives. And so in line with this, we just do videos every week to talk about various issues concerning mental health. You can check out our other videos that we've posted so far. We also have videos under our sister company, College of Marriage, Parenting and Family Affairs. You can find us on Facebook. And there we post videos specifically concerning relationships. And so as we've worked with people, as we've counseled people over the years, we found that actually relationships are a big contributor to whether people find meaning and well-being in their lives. And so this week's session, we're just going to look at the signs of a toxic relationship. And I want to start by defining what a toxic relationship is. And so this is a relationship which is physically and or emotionally damaging. And so it's damaging you either physically or emotionally, and there's some sort of dysfunction in there, and you find that the relationship is mostly draining you, whether emotionally, mentally, or physically. And I want to just distinguish that between a bad patch or an unhealthy relationship. And so when it comes to toxic relationships, these are unhealthy relationships at their extreme. And so every relationship will have ups and downs. Every relationship will occasionally have bad patches. But when you find that this is becoming a recurring long-term pattern, then it's possible that you are in a toxic relationship. And this is not necessarily limited to romantic relationships. It can actually be even in family relationships, whether with parents and their children or siblings, and in friendships as well. And so I thought we could just address some of the key signs that can alert you to the fact that you are in a toxic relationship. And why is it important to know when you're in a toxic relationship? It's important to recognize these signs because actually toxic relationships tend to escalate to abuse. And so it's important that when you recognize it, it gets dealt with early before it escalates into abuse. And if you recognize some of these, but they're not too extreme, you may just have an unhealthy relationship, in which case you can get counseling, get help to address some of those unhealthy relationship patterns. But if you find that these signs are present in your relationship to the extreme, then it's possible that you are in a toxic relationship. And so let's get started. So the first sign of a toxic relationship that I want to talk about is what I call the relationship scorecard. And with this, what happens is that one or both partners in the relationship constantly bring up the past whenever there's an issue or whenever there's a conflict. And so either one or both of you will consistently be reminding the other of what they did wrong. You'll have the specific day, the specific occasion, and you'll keep bringing it up. And in a healthy relationship, what should happen is that whenever there's conflict, both partners deal with it. They sit down, they talk about what's wrong, and they address that conflict, and they can move on, starting on a clean slate. There's forgiveness, and people are pardoned for any mistakes that they've made. And it's good to just check out our other videos. We've done a series on conflict under College of Marriage, Parenting and Family Affairs. So you should check those out on the different conflict resolution styles and how to resolve conflict in a way that builds the relationship. But now in a toxic relationship, what happens is that conflict is not actually dealt with. Instead, people then keep score of who did what when. And what happens is that this can actually deflect from dealing with the actual issues in the relationship. And so current issues that come up are actually not dealt with because it becomes an issue of the past and what happened. And one partner may actually be using this past and things that happened in the past to manipulate the other partner using guilt or shame. And so that's what happens with the relationship scorecard, is it keeps being about what happened in the past. And this is a sign of unhealthy patterns of relation within the relationship. The second one that I want to talk about is passive aggression. And with this one or both parties avoid conflict. And so they don't want to address issues. Whenever there's an issue, whenever there's tension, instead of sitting down and discussing it and talking about it openly, what happens is that they end up using small petty ways to express their displeasure or their anger. And so, for example, they might just out of nowhere on your end, because you don't know what has upset them, they just start giving you the cold shoulder. And so little things like that, or they just start snapping at you. And so they use all these passive aggressive ways of expressing their displeasure. And then they actually expect the other partner to interpret these hints and to read their mind about what's wrong. Now, what should happen is that in a healthy relationship, conflict is dealt with openly. And so if someone is upset, they feel free to come out to openly discuss their feelings and their desires. And each person takes responsibility for their needs and their feelings instead of putting that responsibility on the other person. And so in a healthy relationship, your feelings and your needs are your responsibility. And so you have the honors to bring them up and talk to your partner and talk to your friend and talk to your family member and say, look, I feel upset when you do this ABC, and I need you to do this for me. And so it becomes your responsibility to express your feelings and your needs, and not the responsibility of the other person to meet those needs even without you stating them. And so with passive aggression, it's almost like you are expecting the other person to read your mind about what you need and what you want and how they upset you. And this is harmful because issues cannot actually be addressed. Because it's passive aggressive, the issue is not actually being brought out into the open, and so it cannot be addressed. And so what happens is that issues begin to be accumulated as they get swept under the carpet, and you have these passive aggressive behaviors coming out, and the other person then expects you to be responsible for their own happiness. And so that's the second sign that you are in a toxic or an unhealthy relationship. The third one that I want to talk about is what I call one foot out the door. And with this one person in the relationship always yields the constant threat of leaving. And so they'll say statements like, I can't be in a relationship with someone who does ABC. Or if you do this, I'm leaving. So there's always that constant use of leaving or of ending the relationship to blackmail, to manipulate, or to control the other party. And this is harmful because what ends up happening is that there's no safe space to communicate honestly about, our feelings and what's happening. Because if the other party in the relationship is constantly afraid that one will leave, they're not able to communicate clearly their feelings and where they're at and any issues that they have. And there's the constant insecurity that results from having one party threaten to leave. And this may end up leading to one of the people in the relationship giving in to demands simply because they want to maintain the relationship. What should happen in a healthy relationship is actually there should be a mutual level of commitment to the relationship. And what this does when you understand that both parties are committed to the relationship is that it builds a safe space for issues to be addressed. It builds a certain trust in each other, knowing that you're both in this relationship and committed to this relationship. It then provides a secure base from which you can address any issues that arise. And so that's the third sign of a toxic relationship, is what I call one foot out the door. The fourth one that I want to talk about is excessive jealousy. Now, with any relationship, some level of jealousy is normal, depending on the other person's behavior. Some level of jealousy is normal. But I want to emphasize that people are still responsible for what they do with their emotions and for their actions. And so you can't blame anyone for what you then do. Everyone, while most people will feel jealous at some point in time, if you then take it a step further and use manipulative or controlling behaviors, that is not okay. And you need to take responsibility for that. And so what happens when there's excessive jealousy is that there's no trust in the relationship, and it can actually be demeaning. It can come out as someone trying to control the other person's activities, where they go, who they see, what they do. And so in extremes, one partner may actually cut off the other partner from relationships with friends and family. They may restrict their movements and activities. They may use surveillance, and so they constantly check your phone. They have your passwords to your accounts, and they're constantly just checking on you. And what happens is that this just shows that there is no trust in the relationship, and it can actually be, like I said, pretty demeaning. And so a healthy relationship needs to have a level of trust. And where there's excessive jealousy, it may be a sign that it's a toxic relationship. Now, the fifth sign that I want to talk about that you're in a toxic relationship is constantly feeling the need to change yourself. And so there's one side of it, which is you constantly feeling the need to change yourself. And the flip side of it is constantly feeling like the other person in the relationship is trying to change you. And what happens is that they may use controlling behaviors or manipulation to try and make sure that you fit into their mold that they have made for you. And what happens is that you may actually begin to lose your sense of self and feel that you cannot say no. You can begin to feel like you have no autonomy. And you can actually become afraid to express any disagreement. And so even when they say something that you are not okay with or that you don't agree with, you can actually feel unsafe to express that disagreement, because oftentimes when you do disagree, it's met either with criticism, with contempt, or with dismissal. Your opinions are just dismissed. This can actually be a sign that you're in a toxic relationship. What may end up happening is you may end up walking on eggshells around that person, and so constantly trying to make sure that everything that you do, everything that you say fits into their mold of what you should be like. And this is unhealthy. In a healthy relationship, what should happen is that both parties actually respect each other's beliefs and each other's values. And you love the person for who they are and not what you want them to be. And there should be an appreciation of the positive and a sense of self as a separate person. And so you are two individuals in any relationship. You are two individuals building a level of interdependence, but each person should maintain their autonomy and their sense of self so that it's a healthy relationship. I like what Dr. Madhovi is always saying. He says the goal is not to think the same, but to think together. And so what you're trying to build is a relationship where each person maintains who they are and you grow together in interdependence. And that's what healthy looks like. If you're constantly feeling like you are needing to change yourself, or the other person is trying to change you, then you may be in a toxic relationship. Now, the sixth sign that you are in a toxic relationship is blaming the other for own feelings and actions. And so this may be you blaming the other person in the relationship for your feelings and your actions, or the other way around, where they blame you for their feelings and actions. And so this may sound like statements like, now look, you made me angry, or of course I cheated on you, you did ABC. And so you have one person in the relationship not taking responsibility for their own actions, for their own feelings, and they make you feel like it is your job to keep them happy. In a healthy relationship, each party in the relationship takes responsibility for their own actions and their own feelings, and they admit to mistakes when they've made mistakes, and they also apologize when they've made mistakes. And so these are the signs of unhealthy and toxic relationships that we've covered. If you find that you are actually in a toxic relationship, it's very important that you get help before it degenerates into abuse. And so it's important to know these signs and to recognize them when they're there, and to seek help when you need it. If you find that these signs are there but only in a limited measure, that might just be a sign that you have unhealthy ways of relating within your relationship, and it may still help you to get help to try and establish healthy ways of relating to each other and to build your relationship. And that's all we had for this week's Check-in Wednesday. Thank you for joining us. We will see you next week.